Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with our special guest, USF Hall of Famer, Dianna Albini. Dianna, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored that you asked.
Well,
My
tell me about
first experience.
you are a Hall of Famer. Now that doesn't happen every day. So we're just thrilled to have you. This is what I
Mhm.
want to do. I want everybody to get to know you very quickly. So let's
Okay.
talk about where you grew up and let's talk about mom and dad.
I grew up in Elk Grove, uh, where you went to school,
That's right.
high school. We went to the same high school. Uh, it was very small then. When I first moved to Elk Grove, there was about 7,500 people.
Yeah.
My mom worked in the main hub of Elk Grove, which was the Bank of America, where all the things happened. And every time I got caught doing something, someone would see me out on the streets and go report it promptly to Bank of America, where I would then later discuss it around the dinner table. It was a great place to grow up, much different than it is now. A lot of people,
A lot of people.
a lot of people. My dad built houses. He had two daughters, so he referred to us as his crew. So my sister and I learned how to build houses. I could still hang sheetrock and frame and uh, tinker around and fix things.
Wow.
Played softball. Um, was fortunate enough to earn your high school Bill Cartwright scholarship
Well,
when I was a senior.
let's go back to that because we want to talk about you in high school and what kind of kid you were. Now we know you were uh, super sporty. Now were you academic as well?
Yeah, I was also very shy, which surprises a lot of people. Um, Especially now, people know me or like, no, you were never shy. And yeah, I was. I just played sports, went to school, loved math, had incredible math teachers, amazing math teachers. Um, Thought I was going to be a math major. Started out that way when I went to college. Didn't end up that way, but yeah, I liked school. Um, my mom used to make it fun, and I believe that that's part of the reason why I'm able to do what I do today. Is her both of my parents were involved in our education and our homework and whatnot, but my mom had this amazing ability to storytell. So if we had a certain history exam, say, coming up, she would create this timeline and a story that went along with what we needed to know, what I needed to know. And then you get in and take the exam and you just tell yourself the story. So I'm a lawyer, I'm a trial lawyer. Uh, Last 35, well, I've been a lawyer for 35 years, retired judge, 10 years. Uh, but it's the same thing talking to a jury. You just tell a story, tell them the facts. So very involved. I was very blessed growing up. Wonderful parents.
Well, we're gonna go back a little bit because um, you played sports in high school, and obviously you
Yes.
were very good. Um, did you have anybody who coached you through that and made you into a very good athlete?
Um, well, it's kind of interesting. I started playing softball when I was 12, and it it sort of just came naturally. My parents were very involved in our lives, and they would switch off. One year, my dad would coach one of the teams, and then my mom, and back and forth between myself and my sister. And there was a particular game, I don't even remember how old I was. I was right around 12. And I used to play third base and outfield because I was a fielder and I could hit. And the pitcher for our team was injured and couldn't pitch anymore. So my dad said, okay, we need somebody. You're going to go be the pitcher. And I'm like, I don't know how to pitch. So I just kind of lobbed it. And I guess it's just my personality. If I'm going to do something, I want to know how to do it, and I want to be the best at whatever it is that I do. So when the game was over, I was talking to my dad. And I said, if you're going to put me out there, somebody needs to teach me how to pitch. Well, that's when I found out for the first time that when he was in high school, he went to Santa Rosa High School, and they used to have a men's fast pitch softball team, and he was the pitcher. I'm like, really? You're just telling me this now? So he taught me how to pitch. And I had, I basically, my sport was softball and I played year round. And there was a couple friends who, during the time, I believe it's been in the 70s when there was a women's fast pitch softball team, um, also knew how to pitch and started helping me. I've been very blessed in my life with the people that have just kind of appeared, such as yourself, and given me great opportunities. And I'm like a sponge. I love to learn anything, um, which is one thing I've found fascinating with law because you learn different things. I get bored really easy, so I like to be learn new things. And I just worked hard. Uh,
Okay. So you were in high school, you're a great
okay,
student.
still back in high school.
Yeah, still in high school.
Still in high school. Okay.
So,
Okay, here's the sad thing. I wasn't confident enough. I didn't think I was good enough to make the team my freshman year. My year was the first year that freshmen went to I'm sorry, went to Elk Grove High School. So I graduated in eighth grade from Joseph Kirk, where I was in the marching band.
uh,
Uh, and so I was too intimidated and afraid and embarrassingly to admit that I didn't think I'd make the team, so I didn't go out for the team my freshman year. So I did go out and I made it my sophomore year and pretty much thereafter. But it's interesting. Life's interesting.
yeah, well, I tell you what, you had to be pretty good. So after that,
Mhm.
you graduated from high school. So what are you thinking? Because we knew where you ended up, but how did that happen? And why did that happen? Because there's a lot of universities.
It's a great question. I was fortunate enough. I had offers from all over Oklahoma, Oregon, UCLA, Berkeley, uh, Texas, Florida. There was a few other places. I was fortunate enough to have choices. And uh, at the time I was making the decision, my dad had polycystic kidney disease and he was on dialysis. So I knew I wanted to stay somewhere in California, just to be close to home. Um, and so I had gone to Cal, and I've always grown up in very small places. Elk Grove, 7,500. There's probably 9,000 people by the time I graduated. My graduating class was 300 people. So, you go visit different places and you get the tour. And I'm getting the tour of Cal, and I did the same thing at UCLA. And they're explaining to me this huge campus, and how in certain classes you'll meet in an auditorium, you'll have 1,000 people in your class, and they'll break up into smaller groups of 300. And I'm thinking, whoa. Uh, and then I went to USF, and it was it felt like home when I went there. It was a very small, it was, well, at that time, it was much smaller than it is now, but it just close knit. People were real, uh, very friendly. It just clicked. It felt like home. And that was where I ended up going. It was a good fit for me.
So who was the coach there? And talk about some of your teammates.
When Michael Rice was the coach when I went there, and he was the one that recruited me. I ended up he came to recruit. I was a junior when he came to watch one of the games, and he was recruiting at the time a friend of mine who was playing first base, really good softball player. I didn't get to talk to him then, but I found out years later. But that's when he started, first became aware of me, and actively, when I was able to, started recruiting me and hounded. Uh, he was a wonderful man, and part of the reason why I ended up going to USF was if he was real. I don't know if you experienced, my experience was being promised this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
and sometimes it was insincere when it came across. I mean, it was flattering to be courted by all these people, but Mike was always real. Uh, um, and one of the things he said is, I believe that you can make a difference in this program. And that's something that is really important to me, is to make a difference in whatever I do. Um, and we did. We were real. We had a good program, but we made it by the time I was a senior into quarterfinals, the finals. We went farther than we ever did. So I got to make a change. And that was fun.
Did you have some like I had some great teammates, Wilford Boys, James Harding. They were all Americans also, and they were super special. Did you have some teammates who you were really close to?
Team was really close. One of the things that, well, my sister was there for 2 years she came 2 years after I was there. Um, uh,
Her name?
is Pam Albini. She was a second baseman, very, very talented. I didn't appreciate how good she was until she was injured and I had to take her place on second. I'd never played second base. I didn't realize how much you had to move back and forth. And I was always, so I don't even remember, I think it was something to do with her knee and it took her out of the game. And I just remember her sitting on the bench with an ice pack wrapped around it. And she's giving me directions on where I'm supposed to go, which I'm supposed to cover. So I always respected her as an athlete, but uh, I had a lot more respect after I learned how hard she worked. I just stayed in one place. I just had to throw the ball. But we used to do these things where we try the team inspiration. You know, I won't name names, but we used to, half of our team seemed to be from Southern California and half of our team was from Northern California. So we would go to the Giants games that before it was in San Francisco at the nice new park. And we'd dress up and we'd go to the Dodger Giants games. So we had to alternate every year on which side, for every game that they were playing, which side we were sitting on. And we used to just do some really crazy things. I remember one year somebody got a hold of the coach's the hallway key for where the coaches' offices are, and we at the time thought it was a good idea. We went and filled up the coach's office with balloons and paper, so when you opened the door, you couldn't actually walk in. We had a nice sign that came down. It was Spirit Week. Coach didn't think it was so funny. Um, we just had a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Great, great people.
Now, you were a student at school, so and I think was Father Lowe still there?
Yes, Father
So,
Love was wonderful.
okay, so Father Lowe was still there. So um, talk about like I had one of my professors I loved was Alan Calvin, who was the School of Psychology there. So he was great. Did you have a professor that you really liked when you were at school?
Gosh, there were several. And I'm so terrible with names. Um, Rabbi Davis, one of the only class I ever got an A plus in, which I thought was interesting, was Adventures in Judaism at a Jesuit institution. But he was fantastic. He was a really interesting man with life experiences, and it's terrible, but my major ultimately, when I had to finally lock it in, I think I was on a first name basis at the registrar's office because I kept changing what I wanted to do. Uh, so they'd see me coming as not again. Um, but ultimately, I was in sports management. Um, and I thought I wanted to work as an athletic director at university in sports because I've spent my entire life around sports. And he was an attorney, he was an adjunct professor, and I took him for business law. And he was fascinating and it was interesting. And it was the first time that I'd had any exposure to the legal system or learning about the law. And he just made it fun. For the life of me, can't remember his name, but he had a great influence on me. Um, I think one of the most uh, interestingly uncomfortable experiences. I don't know if human sexuality was a course that you had to take, but it was a course I had to take, and I can't remember her name, but it was taught by a nun who she was so funny. She was hysterical. Um, but it was a little uncomfortable being in there, full habit talking about sex.
Yeah, I think we did take that class, but I think we chuckled through the whole class. So
That's pretty much it. I think my natural color was red by the time, and I tried to sit in the back, and I had come out of my shell a little bit, but I mean, my generation, we didn't talk about sex with other people other than maybe friends,
yeah,
but to do it in a class with people we didn't know and with a nun, it just was counterintuitive. But that's what makes life interesting, new experiences. Uh, let's see. There were a lot of really excellent professors that I had that I learned a little bit from everybody. I mean, uh, I had some kind of quirky professors. He was a phenomenal accounting professor, but he was from Australia, but you knew not to sit. He was very excitable, and he had a tendency to spit when he spoke, so you knew that you needed to sit in the back of the room, because otherwise you go to those marine parks where they have the plastic tarps in the front couple seats. Um, but it was interesting. I learned a lot. I still remember a little bit about accounting.
yeah, you just couldn't sit in the front row.
Just go in the front row. And I knew that because I sat there once. I came late to class. Um, gosh,
Okay, so you're about to leave USF
uh,
and uh, had a successful time there, athletically and student wise. So what are you thinking now? Do you have a vision about where you're headed?
no, I was the first one in my family to go to college. So, uh,
Wow, outstanding.
yeah, thank you. Uh, I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew it was important, and my mom really pushed. She wanted us to have our own, to learn, be able to stand on our own 2 feet, not have to ever rely on anybody, which I'm very thankful for. Uh, but I had absolutely no clue as to what I was going to do. And it was on me because my parents, they supported us in whatever we wanted to do, and would give us the opportunity to do whatever we wanted to pursue. And in hindsight, we weren't poor, but we certainly didn't have a lot of money. And my parents made some pretty phenomenal sacrifices so we could do things. The only glitch was if we said we were going to do something, we had to finish it. And we had to at least do it for a year. So throughout my life, I learned ballet, which I'm not very good at, but tap dancing, which I won the talent show when I was 6, and swimming and golf. And so it was a very supportive, encouraging environment. I felt, well, I have to do something else. I got to do something better. And one of the things that I've always done throughout my life is, and it was always interesting when people would ask me, well, how do you compare to so and so? And it's so foreign to me because I don't compare myself to other people. I compete with myself. So, okay, I set certain goals and I want to accomplish this, and then I do. Sometimes I set the goals too high, and then I'm like, well, what are you going to do now? So I was, I don't even know where this comes from, but I was concerned my parents wouldn't be proud of me. So I thought, okay, well, I got to do something else. So I've always been really interested in medicine and the law. So in my room, I had a poster, a law poster, and a medical poster. And I thought, okay. So I closed my eyes. I had a dart in my hand. I spun around. I threw the dart. It landed on the law poster, and I go, oh, okay, I'll go to law school. So that's how I ended up in law school. And I admire these people that have known all their life. That's what they want to do. But honest to God, that's how I went to law school. I applied at the very last minute. I didn't even know what the LSAT test was, which is like the MCAT boards to go to medical school. You have to take the LSAT to go to law school. Took it at the very last opportunity. Still don't understand what the scores mean, but I ended up being accepted at USF, McGeorge. Um, I would have gone to USF Law School, but at the time my dad was not doing very well. So I decided to go to McGeorge, which is in Sacramento. And I'm really glad that I did. I started law school, went for the first semester and took a leave of absence. And I'm so happy that I did. And I got to spend a year with my dad before he passed away. And then I went back to law school and became a lawyer, and rest is history.
So when you first got to law school, what kind of attorney did you want to be? Did you want to represent people? What did you want to do?
Wasn't sure. And it's interesting to me because I do have this side of me that is shy. Uh, but I it was more of a process of elimination of what I didn't want to do, is how I ended up where I was. And my biggest fear was I was going to get out of law school and then have no idea what I was supposed to do. I'm a blue collar family, and I didn't know any lawyers. There weren't any lawyers in my family, my immediate family, cousins down the road, but not that I was close with. Um, so I took some classes, and I also started clerking, which I'm really glad I do. Law school gives you certain skills and teaches you the law. Uh, when I was there, it's changed a lot over the years, decades. So I thought I need to get a job working as a clerk and figure out what it is they actually do. So one of the first jobs I had was clerking at a general practice firm, that meaning they do a little bit of everything. Uh, and part of it was family law. I knew immediately I didn't want to have anything to do, and I have the utmost respect. It takes very special people to be able to deal with family law and family law situations and issues fighting over kids. And it's just, I could not do it. So I think I ended up having one case in dealing with family law. Contracts, it was okay. It's kind of dry, wills and trusts, a lot of paperwork. Something I never envisioned was sitting behind a desk and doing paperwork. And eventually I clerked at a firm that did trial work, personal injury, representing people that were involved in catastrophic injuries. And that's ultimately what I went into, which is interesting in hindsight because a lot of it has to do with medicine and talking about I represented a lot of individuals who had traumatic brain injuries, which is fascinating to me. The mind, the brain, and how it works, and um, how people can overcome, and just learning all about medical stuff. Um, so ultimately, that's by trial and error was where I ended up. I ended up being hired by the firm that I clerked at for the last uh, 2 years of law school, and I was the first woman hired by the firm. And it was an amazing experience that a lot of my friends who went to larger firms didn't have. I had my first trial 3 months after I passed the bar. First solo trial. It was very interesting. You know, trial thing where it's a half day where you present certain parts of your case, but when you're in front of people picking a jury, I had Judge Brown in Nevada City, who was just a wonderful guy, very smart. Uh, but I remember we had just picked the jury, and Nevada City at the time was very small. So he was having a barbecue at his house and invited everybody. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's unethical. You can't interact with the judge and the jurors. And um, come to find out now, I probably would have because the other side went. But it's interesting being on one side of your career and then now kind of on the other end, having done it so long and looking back at the little interesting things. And
Is being an attorney, is that male dominated, or what's the ratio of women to men in that field?
when I first started, it was very much, I used to call it the good old boys club. And to some extent, it still is, but it's changed a lot in 35 years. Uh, I remember being told uh, you can never wear pants in at work. I wore dresses and skirts, and uh, judges would not allow you to wear pants.
Wow.
Um, we
So
were treated.
the judge would tell you you can't wear pants? The judge.
I never wore pants, but I was in court when a judge said, "In young lady, in my courtroom, women don't wear girls don't wear pants." And I was like, "Whoa, really?" And I didn't for the longest time. I had my law firm in San Francisco, and I for several years. And I remember the first time I wore pants, it was very uncomfortable because I'd never done it before. Now it's much more comfortable to be in pants. Um, but little things like that. You won't be invited because this is an all men's thing. Um, and whenever you have new attorneys that have been around can kind of stretch the envelope and see how far they can push you. I had situations where intimidation, they try and intimidate you. I have been yelled at. I've been called honey and sweetie. Um, and if it's not meant to be a condescending thing, then I don't take it that way. I've had cases, even, 5, 10 years into my career with older, uh, grandfatherly, kind people who would say honey or or dear. That doesn't bother me because it's not being delivered in a condescending manner. But I've had situations where I've had opposing counsel say, "Well, sweetheart, excuse you, sweetheart. Well, listen, babe, we don't do things that way when I'm involved." Um, yeah, it's interesting. It's in the whole, um, and I do think it's changing, but not to the extent. One thing I will say is I don't think that I would have been as successful as had I not had the wonderful opportunity to play sports and to learn what it's like to be part of a team, which happened uh, in large part to Title IX, giving me an opportunity, having your scholarship. We couldn't afford it. I would have been going to junior college and may have possibly had a completely different life and different experiences. Um, and it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine about Title IX because there's a concern because it's being dismantled. And I'm currently out of my third retirement phase. I'm good for about 2 months and then I get bored and drive everybody around me crazy. So I go back to work. I've been at this firm. It's the Wade Law Group, and Emil Wade he's an amazing man who uh, actually his ethics and his integrity and his care for clients is very much aligned with my values, which is why I went back to work. One of the reasons, well, why I went there. Uh, and I was talking to some of the people who also work there, and Maggie is a paralegal who also, her and her sister are from the South Bay and played softball before Title IX. Her offer to go to college, I think it was her sister was offered $50 and Maggie was off 75. One of them was offered $50 and the other was offered $75 for their entire career. That was their scholarship. Which to me is just, and they were good. They were on winning teams. Um, so I totally forgot what the question was and went off on a tangent. So I apologize for that.
Well, let's do this because now, how many different firms have you worked at? Because you had your own firm, right?
Yeah, I had my own firm. Uh, so I worked in Sacramento for, let's see, good, for quite a while, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make more money, frankly. And at the time, um, I was flat out told that I didn't need to make as much because I didn't have a family. So I didn't need to make as much as so and so. Which when I got my first job, I think I made as a lawyer $25,000 a year, which seemed like a lot of money to me at the time. Um, it was in the 90s, early 90s. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of skills. That's where I was going. Um, I worked for a a nationwide firm for about a year in San Francisco. And what I found was uh, they like to have a lot of meetings to have meetings to tell us about the meetings that we were going to have. And I don't do well in that situation. I
Yeah.
like to have a task. I will do that task, overdo that task. I tend to over prepare. I get hyper focused and I don't do well with micromanagement. Um, so at that point, I decided to open my firm. So I'm now in my own firm. That's firm number three. Uh, and I was there for almost 10, 12 years. and I was appointed an administrative law judge in Oakland by Arnold Schwarzenegger for about 10 years.
Okay, what was that like? Wow,
I
that's
my
that's
my
that's like
personality,
amazing.
I always wanted to be a judge. I think that my personality is very suited to have no problem making decisions, and I think I'm fair and impartial. Uh, I liked it. I liked it a lot, but it was again, it was a learning curve. I remember the first case that I presided over. Um, I'd always been on the other side, so I was the attorney that was objecting or making an argument. And I remember in the first case, the lawyers are made objections, and then they're looking at me, and I'm like, hmm. Oh, I have to rule. Oh, okay. I forgot where I was for the moment. So I had to, it was a different role and I got to make the decision. Um, it was, I enjoyed it a great deal. I liked it. But then I retired and I ended up ultimately taking a consulting. That was my retirement. I actually went to work at Home Depot. I moved to Florida for a little while. Um,
Wait, how does that happen that a judge is at the Home Depot? What is up with
well,
that?
the manager of the Home Depot wanted to know this. He was Anthony. He was a great guy. He's like, "You're kidding me, right?" I go, "No, no." Well, I grew up going to lumber yards and everything with my dad, so it was kind of, and I love to do projects. So I had done everything I could think of doing around the house. I learned how to put a chain link fence in and redid some sheetrock in the garage and basically ran out of projects. And I was at Home Depot every day, and it reminded me of going and doing things with my dad. The smell of the lumber and all this. It was kind of comforting. It's the same way if I go into like a hardware store or a library. I'm gone for days. Just so I ended up, I'm like, well, I'm here every day. What the heck? So I went in and applied, and I always wanted to learn how to drive a forklift. So I got certified on driving three different kinds of forklifts, and I had a blast, and the people were great. And uh, an opportunity came to be a consultant and move to Puerto Rico, which I did, um, and manage thousands of cases and hundreds of lawyers. So I did that for about a year, um, and eventually moved back to California.
That is, um, there really are no words. I'm not sure there's anybody else that would do that. So that's very interesting.
I if it's interesting to me, it doesn't matter what it is. Like I said, I like to learn, and it's fun. It was fun and completely different than uh, the law could be stressful. Um, so it was a two of my favorite jobs have been. I was fortunate enough when I was in college because being on a scholarship, you can only work when you're not in school. So I worked at a paper plate, the China paper plate factory in Sacramento, Prize Fiber, while I was on summer and Christmas break. And it was amazing because that's when I had the opportunity to earn money, and they were a union, which was great. So when I first started, uh, you could work Sundays and make triple time. So in the 80s, making $18 an hour was unheard of as a 20-year-old part-time summer kid. It was because of um, people that my parents' best friends. Um, we played softball with their daughter, who's still a very dear friend of mine. She used to catch for me um, at Elk Grove, and that's how I got the job there. My sister worked there too. The only challenging part of that was because it was union. One year they went out on strike, and unfortunately, it was during the summer and can't cross a picket line. Um, so I was trying to figure out, okay, this is my time. This is the only time I have to earn money, and I have to kind of budget it for the rest of the school year and whatnot. So I was picking up any job and every job. I think one job was picking up almonds. That is a very difficult job. I think I can still see the look on my sister's face because uh, she, at that time we were both at USF at the same time. We both worked at Kai's Fiber, and so I take her around. Oh, look, Pam, there's a job. We can go. We can just go start. Guy, I just talked to the guy. He said, just show up. I had no idea what was involved in picking almonds. Well, basically, they fall off the tree. You pick them up. You have to separate them. Uh, it took half a day to get a bucket full. It was a quarter a bucket. I think the guy felt sorry for us and gave us $5 each and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Um, yeah, that was not a good day. Painted houses. Um, so to answer your question, I, I believe I've worked at 6 firms, 6 being the Wade Law Group, which has been interesting. Interesting. They have. I'm actually I've got a client in London that I'm heading over in a couple of weeks to do depositions in London. That was one of the things I liked about having my own firm because I was the one that was deciding which cases I took. Um, so if you had a case that involved something with some overseas travel, I probably took the case.
So I think you said that you have retired like 3 times.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So are you going to retire? Well, for one thing, I'm not going. So
I
or
think I,
where are you headed to next?
well, that's an interesting question. I, I, I don't think I can ever retire. My mind is just, it, it, I love to learn things. I need challenges. And I do like to help people. It gives me great satisfaction in fighting for an underdog and going up against corporations that have dozens of attorneys and you're sitting there by yourself. It's great. It's a great feeling. After it's over and you win, it's nerve-wracking when it's happening, but and I think my point before was I don't believe I'd be where I'm at today if it wasn't having played sports on a very competitive level and said, okay, bring it on. Um, when I first became a lawyer, it was interesting. And when I had my own firm, I was on the San Francisco Trial Lawyers Board of Directors, and I learned a lot of interesting things, of which I thought was kind of fascinating. Uh, Insurance companies keep stats, like baseball stats, on different lawyers. So they know the lawyers that are actual trial attorneys and the ones that call themselves trial attorneys, the ones that will bring a case to the courtroom steps and then settle the case, and the ones that will actually say, okay, we're going to go. Uh, I just thought it was fascinating that they would keep statistics on attorneys. Maybe it's my softball background or baseball background. Um, I wanted cards. I thought we should have, trial lawyer cards. Uh, but um, it's been an interesting, very interesting experience. Ultimately, I want to be in Maui. So my goal is to try and figure out a way, and because I've been telling Emil that he needs a Maui office, so I'm working on that.
So the last thing I'm going to ask you, if you had to do this over again and you wanted to be an attorney or you were directing a young person to be an attorney, what kind of law would you direct them to?
I don't think I would direct them to a particular, I think you have to, it's trial and error. And you have to have a passion for it. I've heard people say, I want to be a lawyer because I want to make a lot of money. Well, you do have the potential to make a lot of money, but you also have the potential not to. You need to have a passion for whatever you do because it's a lot of work. But I'm semi-retired and supposed to be taking it easy. I worked 70 hours this week. It's crazy. I worked more when I had my own firm. Um, and I think that's probably, I've done it for so many years. I don't know what to do with myself if I have too much free time. Um, but I think you have to love what you do. Not all the time. I mean, not every day do I love the law. Some days I'm like, what am I doing? But if you don't have a passion for it, it doesn't matter how much you make because it's not going to be enough money. And you have to figure out different ways to use your skills that are unique to you. Um, some people are brilliant writers, and I've got friends that do appellate work, and they're brilliant in the way that they write and understand and interact on multiple levels, but they are terrified to be in a courtroom, which I was initially, and still to this day, I still get jitters and feel nauseous, even with 30 years experience, but I love it. Um, so you figure out what it is that you have a passion for and are interested in, and I think that's and try it. You have an opportunity, go clerk, go volunteer. One of the interesting things I did learn when I was going to law school was go to law school where you want to practice. I was fortunate because I do have a USF background. When I had my office, everybody on the San Francisco bench went to USF, which is, it's a great um, resource. Having that background, you have an instant connection with whoever, and it still comes up now. I have defense attorneys that people say are hard to deal with. Well, I try and find a common ground, and most of the time it's USF. You went to USF? Yeah, that's good. When were you there? It's just a great connection point to this day, and it's not just in San Francisco. I had a case down in my last trial was in Pasadena. We were there for 4 months, and the judge there had gone to USF. You kind of have to work it in subtly when you're actually in trial with them, but I kind of let them know that that's where I went. let her know that that's where I went. So do what you have a passion for, I think is the biggest. Do what feels right to you and do it the way that you do it. It's interesting. One of the things that a lot of my peers, you don't have to recreate the wheel. And when I was in trial, other friends of mine who are fantastic trial lawyers would come and observe me, and we'd do the same. And you steal little bits and pieces and use what works with your personality. There's certain things that I was like, there's no way. I couldn't do that. That's not me. Just be real and trust your own skills. And that to me took a while to understand and comprehend that when you're real, people relate to you because they're real. if you try and be something that you're not, it comes across, and it comes across as insincere. And people don't believe you and they don't trust you. So have a passion for whatever it is that you do and do it to the best of your abilities. So that's my advice. And you're not alone because there's a lot of people who will help you. Uh, After trial, I used to go, and some judges will, some judges won't, but it's a great way to learn. And just, I talked, ultimately became really good friends with a particular judge in San Francisco. But I went to her and I was like, that was my first trial before you. I just want some feedback. We don't have to talk about the case. Were there things that I did or things that I should have done, or what was your perception? You also have the ability to do that in talking to jurors. How did you feel about this? How did you feel about that? I learned how to pick a jury because, again, I'm still, believe it or not, shy from time to time. So the thought of just talking and interacting with the jury and having to ask personal questions. So I used to practice in line at the grocery store, trying to learn things about people in front of me and behind me. So that's how I practice picking a jury, and it works. Little things you pick up.
That's that's probably another story right there. But Dianna, I want to thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
That's quite the journey you've been on, and I'm sure your mom and dad were so proud of you because you've just covered a lot of ground, and you're still covering it. It's amazing. So
got tons more stories. We can do part 2 where I had to go into protective custody. And
yes, we are going to have to do that. I would love to hear that myself.
That was interesting. Yeah, that was interesting.
That is definitely part 2, but thank you so much.
Well,
Super
thank you,
awesome.
Bill. Thank you.